Here's a question. When was the last time you heard gossip spread through your workplace, your family, or your social media feed? Now, here's the real question. Was it good news or bad news? I'm willing to bet it was bad news. And I'm willing to bet it spread like wildfire. But here's what most people don't realize. This isn't a quirk of modern life. This isn't about algorithms or sensationalist media. The reason bad news spreads faster than good news is written into your DNA. It's a survival mechanism that's been with us for over 200,000 years. Today, we're going to trace this phenomenon from the African savanna to your smartphone, and by the end of this video, you'll never look at a news alert the same way again. Let's go back 100,000 years. You're part of a small hunter-gatherer band in East Africa. It's early morning, and two members of your group come running back to camp with news. Person A says, "I found a berry bush about 2 miles north. Plenty of food." Person B says, "There's a lion stalking near the watering hole where we went yesterday." Which piece of information do you prioritize? Which one do you immediately tell everyone else? Obviously, the lion, because if you ignore the berry bush, you miss a meal. But if you ignore the lion, you die. This is what psychologists call negativity bias, and it's one of the most powerful forces shaping human behavior. Our ancestors who paid more attention to threats, who spread warnings faster, who remembered dangers more vividly, they survived. They had children. They passed on their genes. The ones who were optimistic, the ones who shrugged off warnings, they became lunch. And here's the kicker. This wasn't just about individual survival. The groups that shared bad news faster, that had better threat communication networks, they outlasted groups that didn't. Bad news wasn't just important to individuals, it was important to the survival of the entire community. Think about it. If one person spots a predator and keeps it to themselves, everyone's at risk. But if that information spreads instantly through the group, everyone benefits. Natural selection didn't just favor individuals who paid attention to threats. It favored entire societies that had evolved efficient systems for spreading warnings. This is why, to this day, your heart rate increases when you hear bad news. Your pupils dilate. Your brain releases cortisol and adrenaline. You're hardwired to pay attention and hardwired to pass it on. Now, fast forward to about 12,000 years ago. Humans start settling down. We invent agriculture. We build the first cities in Mesopotamia in the Indus Valley along the Nile. And something interesting happens. Bad news becomes even more important. Why? Because now we have something to lose. In a nomadic hunter-gatherer society, if there's danger in one area, you just move. But in a city, you've got walls, granaries, temples, homes. You've got infrastructure. You can't just pick up and leave when trouble comes. You need advance warning. This is where we see the first organized systems for spreading information. Ancient Mesopotamian clay tablets from around 2400 BCE show us something remarkable. They contain warnings. Warnings about floods, about invading armies, about disease. The Assyrians, around 700 BCE, created one of history's first postal systems. And guess what kind of information got priority? Military intelligence. Threats from enemies. Rebellions in distant provinces. The Roman Empire? They built 250,000 miles of roads. Sure, those roads were used for trade and administration, but their primary purpose was military, getting news of threats to Rome as fast as possible. The cursus publicus, their postal service, could get a message from one end of the empire to another in weeks. Urgent military dispatches? Days. Here's a perfect example. In 9 CE, 3 entire Roman legions, about 20,000 men, were ambushed and destroyed in the Teutoburg forest in Germania. When news reached Rome, it caused panic. The Emperor Augustus was said to bang his head against the walls shouting, "Varus, give me back my legions." That disaster, that bad news, changed Roman military policy for generations. It shaped the borders of the empire. Good news about conquests in Gaul? That was celebrated. But the bad news from Germania? That was remembered, studied, and became part of Roman strategic thinking for centuries. Bad news didn't just spread faster, it shaped empires. Let's jump to medieval Europe. You might think this was a dark age for information, but you'd be wrong. Medieval societies had incredibly sophisticated systems for spreading news, especially bad news. The church had a network of monasteries across Europe that functioned as an information highway. Monks copied manuscripts, yes, but they also shared news, and warnings traveled this network with remarkable speed. When the Black Death arrived in Europe in 1347, word of its devastation spread faster than the disease itself. Cities ahead of the plague's path heard about it through merchants, pilgrims, and church networks. They knew what was coming. Did it help them? Not much. They didn't understand germ theory. But they tried. They closed ports, quarantined travelers, isolated the sick. The information spread because it was urgent, because it was terrifying, because it was exactly the kind of news human brains are built to prioritize. Here's another example. In 1346, a Mongol army besieging the city of Kaffa in Crimea started catapulting plague-infected corpses over the city walls. The Italian merchants inside escaped by ship, and they spread both the disease and the news of this biological warfare across the Mediterranean. That story, that horrifying piece of bad news, spread across Europe within months. Tales of good harvests or successful trades. Those took years to become common knowledge, if they ever did. Why? Because our brains haven't changed. A threat to survival gets attention. Profitable trade deal? That's nice, but it won't kill you if you ignore it. Now we get to the really interesting part. The modern age. The printing press, invented by Gutenberg around 1440, revolutionized information spread. But guess what sold newspapers in the 1600s and 1700s? Crime reports, disasters, wars, scandals. The first American newspaper, Public Occurrences both for Rain and Domestick, published in 1690, was shut down after one issue. Why? Because it contained scandalous news about the King of France and reported on violence during King William's War. Bad news got it banned. The telegraph in the 1840s could send messages at the speed of light. What was the first news transmitted long distance? In 1844, Samuel Morse sent What Hath God Wrought? But within months, telegraphs were being used primarily for business and, crucially, for news of battles in the Mexican-American War. Radio, television, the internet, social media. Each new technology has accelerated the speed of information, but bad news still moves fastest. Studies of Twitter, now X, have shown that false news spreads 6 times faster than true news, and the false news that spreads fastest? Threats, scandals, disasters, the stuff that triggers our ancient fear response. During the COVID-19 pandemic, information about the virus spread globally within days. Rumors, too, conspiracy theories, panic buying, all driven by that same ancient mechanism. This might be a threat. I need to know. I need to tell others. And here's what's fascinating. We're now dealing with the same evolutionary mechanism that saved our ancestors, but in a completely different environment. We evolved to spread warnings about lions and rival tribes. Now we're using that same system to spread news about stock market crashes, political scandals, and celebrity gossip. Our brains haven't caught up. We're still treating every negative tweet like it's a predator warning. We're still feeling that cortisol spike, that urge to share, that conviction that this is important. So here's what I want you to take away from this. The next time you see a negative news story going viral, the next time you feel that urge to share something shocking or scary or outrageous, pause, recognize what's happening. Your 100,000-year-old brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do, paying attention to threats and spreading warnings. That mechanism saved our species. It built networks of information that helped us survive predators, navigate diseases, and build civilizations. It's not bad. It's just outdated for the modern information environment. The question isn't, why does bad news spread faster? We know why. The question is, now that we know this, what do we do about it? Because understanding our evolutionary history doesn't just explain our present. It gives us the power to shape our future.